Welcome to Market Your Library, Promote with PowerPAC. My name is Kathleen Weiss, and I work as the User Experience Specialist at CCS. This class is geared towards libraries belonging to the CCS Consortium and contains tools and ideas on how to market your collections and programs using PowerPAC. Throughout the course, I'll use the terms library catalog and PowerPAC interchangeably, so don't get confused if you hear both. Before we begin, I would ask that everyone please make sure your microphone is muted. You can do that using the microphone symbol at the bottom of your screen. Chat is also open if you would prefer to enter your questions there. I'll make sure to stop after each section in order to take questions on what I've just presented. I know we'll have a lot of questions, so I want to make sure I take the time to answer those for you. As we take questions, if there's something that is very specific to your library or requires individual follow-up, I'll go ahead and make sure and take your name and email down, and I'm happy to follow up with you if the question is beyond the scope of the class or requires a longer answer. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so for today's presentation, we'll go ahead and cover the following. We'll talk about analytics considerations for your PAC. So with that, that's a little bit more information about who's using your PAC and a little bit of demographic information and what parts of the PAC they're seeing. We'll talk about your training PowerPAC, which is just a sandbox and beta place where you can test things out before going live with patrons. And then as far as tools are concerned, we'll talk about content carousels, automated record sets, exported content carousels, custom HTML that can be added to your PAC, dashboards, configuring your limit by, a feature called Feature It Promotions. We'll talk about the holds page and banners, and then we'll talk about how you can schedule a content inventory with CCS to integrate some of these different tools, and also to get your PAC looking the best that it can be. Okay, so before we dive into tips and tools, I want to take a second to talk about the ways that your patrons access the library catalog or PAC. Before you spend a lot of your time and resources choosing which tools to use, it's important to consider your patron's path to the library catalog. In the same way, you might not use TikTok to promote a health program for seniors or LinkedIn to promote a Minecraft program for teens. You'll want to make sure that you're using the best parts of the library catalog to reach the users that you're interested in. Okay, so that said, who is using PowerPAC? So CCS runs Google Analytics for PowerPAC for most of our libraries. There's a couple that have opted out to run their own Google Analytics, but for the most part, we're getting analytics for over 25 of our PowerPACs. So with these, we can collect some basic demographic data on who our users are. So what's kind of interesting to know is most of our PowerPAC users are aged 25 to 35, followed by 18 to 24 and 35 to 54. The age range is something to consider when you're deciding which programs to promote via the PAC. The age that you're going to be able to reach most is that 25 to 54 age group. Okay, so when we talk about how users are accessing the PAC, this really surprises me because I tend to think mobile is taking over more and more traffic, and I'm sure that we'll see that in our library catalog. But as of now, desktop traffic is making up 76% of PowerPAC sessions, and mobile traffic is making up 24% of PowerPAC sessions. Okay, and this one's a little bit more confusing, but what I wanted to talk to you about is how are users entering the PowerPAC? There are really three different ways for your users to enter your PowerPAC. They can bookmark your library's catalog and return to it again and again, and that would be your homepage. They can also log on via your library's website, and in those cases, they're typically choosing something like My Account or Log On, and that's taking them to the catalog. Most of our libraries also have some kind of search widget that enables people to put in search terms and get to results immediately. So what this slide demonstrates is the path users take when entering the library catalog. So what we're finding is over a third of users are entering via that catalog homepage, and then log on and search results are the second and third most common entry pages. The users that are entering via the log on or search results page, they're typically coming through your library website. So what I'd like to touch on is what does this mean for you as library marketers? It means that today I'm going to show you a lot of tools that will appear on your library's homepage, but it's important to remember that not all of your users are going to be seeing your homepage. So you're probably going to want to choose a mix of tools that can reach users from search results and reach people from that catalog homepage. That way you're touching users in both places that they come to your PAC through. Okay, so as I mentioned, that PowerPAC homepage, we're seeing about 1/3 of users come through there. And then we have users coming in through the login page and through search results entered on your library's website. Okay, so that's the end of that section. I can see that we have a question floating in the chat. Let me go ahead and ask that. Anne from Glencoe asked Kathleen, how are you determining the age of PowerPAC users? So Google Analytics provides us with demographic data on the users that are using PowerPAC. So you have to remember with Google Analytics, there is a little bit of a caveat in that they're not capturing every single session. They're capturing users that are using Google Chrome or who are signed in with their web browser using their Google credentials. So it is a little bit of a, I would say it's like a taste of who's using it, but you can't capture everybody. For example, they're not going to capture if you have users under the age of 18 because they don't look at those users. But Google Analytics does take demographic data when it's supplied by somebody's Google account. So for example, when I create my Google account, I tell them, my birthday is, 1975, and then they can use that data to determine my age when I visit Facebook, or if I were to visit the Glencoe Library website. If those sites are running Google Analytics, they'll get demographic data about my age. So we use Google Analytics to get that data about our users. We don't do anything with it, but it is kind of nice to know who you're reaching and what their ages are. Okay, so a little bit more about the training pack. So I often hear that library staff are surprised to find out that we have what's called a training pack. So I want to tell you a little bit about that before we jump into tools and tips. Okay, so Training PowerPAC is a sandbox where graphic designers, marketers, and other library staff can try out a design or configuration before going live with patrons. It's available using the link on this slide, which I'll share with everybody post-presentation. If you're wanting to view changes in your pack in training before you go live, you can do that in this space by specifying to CCS when you put in a ticket that you'd like to see the changes in your PowerPAC before going to production. It's important to know that with Training Pack, this is really just meant to be a training environment that's not seen by patrons. So if you learn about something today that you're excited to try, but are perhaps nervous to roll out, Training PowerPAC is a great place to do that. Training PowerPAC looks a little bit like this. You can tell that it's Training PowerPAC because it's got training up in the URL, so you'll always know what place you're in. If you visit that Training PowerPAC, all you have to do is click the library dropdown, choose Glencoe, Niles, Des Plaines, Lincolnwood, whatever your library is, and you'll be in your training environment. Okay, so it's a great place to try things out, but I just want you to know that it exists. So that said, let's get into tips and tools. Some of these tips and tools will be things that you might have seen before, but I guarantee you'll learn something you haven't seen before we're done today. Okay, so with patrons spending more time at home and less time in the physical library, finding a way to curate your library's materials in a digital space is more important than ever, and that's where content carousels come in. Content carousels are digital book displays that are fueled by record sets. If you're not familiar with record sets or you haven't created one before, a record set is simply a collection of titles that have been placed in what we might call a digital bucket. The digital bucket is given a number that, when shared with CCS, may be added to your catalog homepage. Record sets link back to the catalog so patrons can find and place holds on materials. So as you'll see in this picture here, these are actually Glencoe's carousels right now. Patrons see these on that homepage. Clicking on a title takes that patron to the title in the catalog. There they can place a hold on it, view more information about it, or locate it in the library. Okay, so a little bit of information about content carousels and some best practices. There's a couple things you want to consider when adding a carousel to your homepage. You want to limit your carousels to no more than 3 to 4 for your catalog homepage. The reason being for this is that when we've done heat mapping, we found that patrons do not look below the fold. Below the fold being the halfway point on the screen where they would have to start scrolling. If you have a lot of carousel ideas, and we have really talented library staff, so they always have a lot of great ideas, I think quality is better than quantity. You don't want to throw the kitchen sink on your PAC homepage. Instead, you're better off thinking of 2 to 3 carousels that really appeal to your users, and then putting those up so that they can see what's there. truly people aren't looking past 2 or 3 carousels. So if your 4th or 5th carousel is full of outstanding titles, most people aren't going to see it. So I like to keep that to 2 to 3. You also want to keep your carousels relevant to what matters to your users right now. So examples for this might be homeschooling, casual viewing, different holidays we're experiencing, safe at home, but you can coordinate these carousels with the social media calendar your library is likely already using when posting. You can also support existing programming. In this example on the right, you can see that the Glencoe Library has taken advantage of Valentine's Day being this month, and they've also promoted Black History Month. But they're really topical carousels using things that is likely in the mind of the patron at this time. Okay, so how do you create a content carousel? So for each thing that we'll go through today, I'll touch on the effort that's involved, where you can go to learn more, and how that particular thing is implemented. So I would say that carousels are a medium effort undertaking. A staff member must create the carousel, and that does take a lot of time, but it's similar to creating a book display, which is likely already rolled into someone's duties. Once the carousel is created, all you need to do is send CCS an email with the record set ID, and we can get that added to your PowerPAC on the same day. Here I've linked to a record set course, and in under 10 minutes, you can learn how to create a record set and share it with CCS. Once you've done that, all you have to do is send us the ID, and we are happy to add it to your pack. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about automated record sets. These are a little bit different. CCS provides 16 automated record sets that may be used to create those same types of content carousels. These are a great what I call set it and forget it option to automatically update without any work from library staff. The record sets are updated weekly and comprised of New York Times bestseller lists. And there's a carousel for almost every single audience. So these are the examples of the automated carousels that are available immediately. So if any of these appeal to you or you wanted to drop them on a page, you could do that on a couple different ways. So over on the right, you'll see what these record sets look like as carousels, but you also have the option to link out to them as dashboards. So on the bottom where it says New York Times bestsellers, this is pulled from the Grays Lake Library. They've offered to just have a dashboard that says New York Times bestsellers, and then they link out to adult fiction, nonfiction, and children's. So these different carousels are comprised of 2 different formats. You can go with just books, or choosing all formats will feature your e-content, as well as audiobooks and other things like that. Okay, we also have what are called CCS created record sets. So these are maintained by CCS groups, and they link out to award-winning books such as Monarch, Bluestem, Caudle, and Lincoln nominees. I really like adding these because at this time where a lot of parents are doing homeschooling or a lot of educators are trying to make recommendations to students and keep in touch, the award winner carousels make it really easy for educators and parents who have students in the specified grades to pull titles or make recommendations for those children. And again, this is another example where you don't have to do any of the work. There are CCS groups that maintain these award winners and they update them annually. So you're getting the award winners from the past calendar year linked in here. And you can see on the right side of the slide, the Niles Main District Library has created a dashboard, we'll touch on dashboard later, that contain children's book awards. And they've linked out to every award set that's available to make that really easy for teachers to find in their district. Okay, probably the most exciting thing you can do with these automated record sets are create what we call library curated automated record sets. It's just a fancy way of saying your library creates an automated record set working with CCS. If you're feeling ambitious, the automated carousels that are fueled by record sets update on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis to feature new materials. The record sets use existing shelf location or criteria specified from your library. Staff may also choose to highlight content that is available now. So the idea with this is we take perhaps new movies, if you have a book club, if you have a library of things, we can pull all of that content into an automated record set that updates as new content is added, and then that information is featured to your patrons. So let me give you a couple of examples. So I really like the Displays book group has an automated record set, and that pulls in all of their new book group editions. Grays Lake has theme bags that are pulled into their record set. The Niles Creative Studio and a lot of libraries having a makerspace or some type of digital environment these days. It's a really nice way to put things out into your community that they might not know about unless they were stopping by a public service desk. Prospect Heights is one of my favorites, where they've got a hot picks carousel where it features new titles that are also available right now. I've seen a lot of Library of Things carousels, and any sort of new additions to your collection, you can feature those through an automated record set. And then as far as how that looks, Prospect Heights recently met with us to rework their PowerPAC, and this included bringing in automated record sets for their patrons to see. As I mentioned, my favorite is the Hot Picks carousel you see featured right front and center. This pulls in all of their new titles, but it only pulls in the titles that are available now. So a patron looking at this can click on something they see here and say, oh, that looks like a great read, or I'm excited about that. And then it's something that they can go check out immediately, so long as the library is open, or it's something they can place on hold, and pick up in the next couple of days. So we're sort of satisfying that itch for like instant gratification while showing people new things, because sometimes there's nothing more infuriating than getting excited about a new title and seeing that you're the 200th person on hold for it. And then on the left-hand side here, you'll see that they've included many of the New York Times bestsellers, automated record sets, and the Children's Book Awards. And the nice thing is with these automated record sets, it's really a set it and forget it. So the carousel and the dashboards you see on the left side, those will keep updating automatically. There's a little bit of setup in the beginning that can take some time, but once you're done, that's maintaining itself. So it's very little work for library staff once it's established. Okay, so how to for this. So I would say that this is really easy to medium, depending on how you decide to approach it. You can opt to simply request one of the record sets seen on slides 20 and 21. If you do that, it's just sending CCS an email and having those record sets added to your pack. Or if you want to build something custom for your library, that can take a little bit more work and kind of involves a conversation. For example, right now we're working with the ELA library to create a record set that will feature new cookbooks that are added to their collection. This will appear as a carousel on their PowerPAC. But what's great about it is once we've set it, it's that set it and forget it method where new record sets will just fuel new books appearing on that PowerPAC screen. But those cookbooks will be easy and accessible for patrons to find. Okay, so let's talk about exported content carousels. This is a newer feature that was brought on board with the 6.5 version of Polaris. But what exported content carousels allow us to do is use a tool called the Content Carousel Toolkit in the staff client and export your content carousels as an iframe or HTML. The HTML or iframe can then be embedded in your library website or on a reader's advisory blog. The titles in this carousel link back to the library catalog, so it's a nice way to join your library website to your catalog, and they will update automatically as well. So here's an example of what that looks like. So you can see here that I've embedded my carousel outside of PowerPAC into a simple Google site. The carousel will update automatically, just like it would as if it was in the library catalog. So any carousel that you've created using our Polaris tools, you can easily embed on a library website or on any external website given the code. Okay, so how do you do that though? I rate this one as medium to difficult. The reason I say it can be a little bit more difficult is it really depends on, are you comfortable with HTML? Do you have access to the staff client? The thing with this is once you have that access to the staff client, there's a really easy step-by-step guide that will take you through creating the HTML or the iframe. Really all you're doing is you're pulling that record set ID, which is just that special identifier for your record set. You're putting it into what looks just like a wizard. Once you've done that, it really spits out the HTML or it spits out the iframe. You then need to access the back end of your website, but the carousel should follow any CSS rules that are already in place. If you think to yourself, I'm not sure it's worth my time and effort to go into the staff client, learn how to use that in order to embed this on my website, CCS can also provide you the HTML of any existing carousel if you'd like to experiment and see how this behaves on your website first. So for example, if you just wanted the HTML or the iframe for the New York Times bestseller, and you want to embed that on your website to see how it behaves before you invest time and staff resources into that, we can send that to you. And then you can see how it looks on your site before adapting it for other carousels that your library staff might curate. Okay. Are there any questions about the content carousel toolkit? I don't see any in the chat, so I'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about custom HTML. So while we're on the topic of HTML, you also have the option of adding custom HTML to your library catalog. This is a great way to promote an ongoing event or addition of a special collection. Any images used in this space should be 1100 pixels wide and up to 400 pixels tall. You can opt to have the image link out if you like. I think the most important thing to remember is that this image will appear on desktop and mobile. So you want to be sure it's legible in both situations. I'd like to show you two good examples of that. Okay, so you can see, for example, the Grays Lake Public Library opted to include an image that promotes their winter reading program. So the image appears, you can see on the left on their desktop pack, and then on the right, you can see how it looks on mobile. But patrons who tap or click on top of that image are taken to the website where they can then register for winter reading. But it's a nice way to share information about that program in a public space that patrons will see. Similarly, patrons who are most likely to have bookmarked your library pack are likely reading very often or engaging with the library very often. So they're the types of people you want to have involved in winter reading. Okay. At Winnetka Northfield, they've opted to include links to special collections. This HTML is a little bit more complicated. You can see that they've got one large image that follows that 1100 by 400 dimensions that I gave you earlier, but then they've also got smaller images that link out to children's nonfiction, fiction movies and teen collections. This is a little bit more complex, but if you wanted to put more than one image in here, you certainly can. But if you've done something like add a new app or you're featuring a big splashy program, this space in your pack is a great place to promote that event. The other piece about this that's quite nice is when it comes to how to implement it, it's rather easy. All you have to do is send us an email with that image. We will put it in your training pack, which allows you and library staff to take a look at how that looks, make sure the layout is just right, it's linking up correctly. Once you like the way it looks, you just give us your approval and we can add that to your PowerPAC to go live. And again, this can be done in a day. It's nice and easy. All right, so a little bit of information about dashboards. So dashboards are the easiest way to link to your content throughout PAC. A dashboard is a content box that may house free text, links, or HTML along the left side of your library catalog. One of the reasons I like adding these in is that it's really easy to do. All you have to tell CCS is what you'd like to have included in the dashboard, and we add it for you. We can mock this up in your training pack and make it live in your production pack whenever you're ready. Before considering whether to add a dashboard, you'll want to consider whether to add the dashboard as open or closed. So let me show you an example of that. So here I've brought up the Huntley Area Library website, Huntley Area catalog. So you can see on the left side, they have what we call closed dashboards. So for each of these, they're pretty minimal, but they all have a downward facing arrow. So you'll see right here, there are these little arrows that allow these dashboards to open up where they contain more information. The overall look is much cleaner, but sometimes patrons miss out on the information that's included in a dashboard because they have to click the drop-down arrow in order to activate it. There's another version of dashboards that appear as open. So you can see on the Indian Trails website, because they've only got these two dashboards, for this library, keeping those dashboards open proved to be a good solution. I usually recommend keeping the dashboards open so long as you don't have 4, 5, or 6 of them, because your patrons will see what's inside of those dashboards without having to click to open them. So once you decide to have open dashboards or closed dashboards, that applies to all of the dashboards in your library pack. So it's important to consider, do you want them all closed or do you want them all open? The thing that will determine that really is the number of dashboards you have and whether or not you think patrons will open those dashboards based on the title that you've given it. Okay. So a couple different types of dashboards you might see. So you can make dashboards available to patrons anywhere in the pack. So if there's a page in the pack, you can put a dashboard on it. Adding a contextual dashboard to your library catalog can add extra information that might be helpful to patrons. So for example, you can see that on that login page, which we now know how many patrons use it, Huntley has opted to add schedule a holds pickup, and they've also added an RSS feed that contains the library's events. So this is an HTML dashboard, and then this is just a simple text dashboard. At the Niles library, on that same login page, they've added a get a library card online dashboard. And the reason for doing that is when a patron clicks hold, they're taken to the login screen. And if they don't already have a card, this gives them the opportunity to create one here. So the idea is you're adding in extra information where it might be helpful for patrons. Okay. Other dashboard examples that have been really popular and I've seen patrons have high use with are dashboards that contain special collections, library of things dashboards, language collections, award winners, and canned searches. And we'll look at examples of each of these next. Okay, so at the Fox River Valley Library, they've really done a fantastic job of adding special collections over the past year. But sometimes, as we all know, the things we decide and the cute names we choose in libraries to call things aren't always exactly straightforward to our patrons. And this is where a dashboard can come in handy. So like many libraries, Fox River Valley added binge boxes. By linking out to those binge boxes in their dashboards, patrons are able to find all of the binge boxes held in one record set, but they've also provided an explanation of what a binge box is. Binge box, I can guess what that is, but it's not always really clear to patrons what these special collections are. So providing an explanation of what the collection is, how it circulates, and what's included is a great idea for a dashboard. They've also added their library of things dashboard. So again, you can see here they've divided it into things that are for youth and things that are for adults and teens. And here they've provided an explanation for what the different parts of the library of things is. I think library staff are really familiar with what library of things is, but when you talk to somebody who is not very familiar with libraries or hasn't heard that term before, providing that explanation in the dashboard allows you to link out to the collection so patrons can quickly find more information, but also get an idea of what's included in something like a caregiver kit or a STEAM kit, which might not be super straightforward just looking at the items record. So we're making collections more findable, providing more contextual information, and just letting people know what you have because they're not coming into that physical building. So a dashboard is really serving as a book display in these situations. At the Algonquin Area Public Library, you can see they've got that same thing where they've put in the library of things, but they've also included their language collections here. So what happens is when a patron clicks on Korean or Spanish adult, Spanish child, etc., they're taken to all of the library's titles that are in that language. So for example, clicking on Spanish children, that will take us to all of the Spanish children's titles held at Algonquin. So it's a nice way to highlight those language collections for speakers. You can see that at Evanston, they have that same thing where they've chosen to highlight those world languages. They've also placed their Get a Library Card online form here. So with this, they've provided extra context for how those e-cards can be used. A lot of libraries get questions about what can actually be done with an e-card within the library catalog. So in this case, they've been able to highlight the digital resources that may be used, as well as what can actually be done with that card. So again, they're answering those questions without those patrons having to contact the library to learn more. And then at the Niles District Library, they've done a really outstanding job of pointing to their special collections. So again, they've got those Children's Book Award winners highlighted here, and they've also got their creative studio equipment highlighted. When I worked at Niles for about 2 years, the questions we got most often had to do with, are your GoPros, hotspots, or Roku's in? So hearing that again and again, we decided to make it really easy for patrons to check on that information themselves by pulling out the collections that we got questions on most often as a dashboard. So patrons can easily click GoPros, see what's in, or they can click on Roku's and see what do we have on the shelf right now that's easy and accessible. Okay, so for dashboards, I would say the effort involved in these is pretty easy once you decide what the dashboard ought to contain. When you decide what collections you want to highlight or where you'd like to add things, all you have to do is shoot us an email with the information you'd like to have included in that dashboard. We can mock that up in your training pack so you can get it looking just right. Once you approve the way that that looks, we add it to your production pack. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about limit buy. So limit buy allows patrons to quickly typically limit their searches based on the type of material, the library branch, or the availability. You can mix and match types of material. For example, running a search for only e-audiobook or ebooks to create a digital-only search. This can be used to identify digital-only collections, which is pretty helpful during a pandemic when a lot of people can't safely visit your physical library. My biggest caution with this is that you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to give patrons 1,000 options to limit by. Pre-pandemic usability testing showed us that patrons preferred to search by all member libraries because they want to see the greatest amount of offerings. However, because we can't all travel to our neighboring libraries and things are opening and closing every day, it is a good idea to provide access to just that digital-only search. So let me show you what I mean by that. So when your patrons go to search your library catalog, typically they're seeing a quick library search, and that is conducting a keyword search. Most libraries by default in their limit by have it set to all member libraries, so that keyword search runs across all CCS libraries, or they have it limited to their local collection. So they might say Niles Main materials, Desplaines materials, Algonquin materials. So it's a limited search. However, you can see that in this example, this library has opted to break out their children's collection, audiobooks, etc. But they've also got a drop-down that includes only streaming music, only streaming video, ebooks, and e-audiobooks. What you could do is you could put a digital-only drop-down in your limit by, and what that would do is it would limit the search your patrons are running to materials that are only available online, and that enables people to find things that are accessible right now. So even though they might have to place a hold the same way they would on print materials, at least they know what they're seeing is something they won't have to visit the physical library in order to get. So I think the idea that we have services that are accessible only online is becoming more and more the norm. So having a way to subdivide your collection quickly between things that are available online and things that are available physically in the library makes it really easy for patrons who've decided they're only going to exist in a digital world to find the things that you have accessible to them. All right, so I say the effort for this is medium. The reason I say that is you'll need to work internally to determine what types of material to include in your limit buys. I've linked out to the different types of material here, and what that will take you to is a PDF of all of the different types of materials that you can combine together to create those different options that you saw in the dropdown. And again, it's important to remember you can make that as complicated or as simple as you like. I'm always a fan of keeping it simple. If you wanted to do something like digital only, or something that was just ebook, or something that was just e-audiobook, that'll make it really easy for your patrons to find what they need without overwhelming them with choices. I think on that limit by dropdown, decision fatigue is a real thing for a lot of people. So if you can make it really easy for patrons to see physical things and digital things within that dropdown, you're going to make their life a lot easier. If you decide this is something you are interested in doing, again, this is just an email to help@ccslib.org, letting us know what your desired limit by options are. And again, we can mock this up in your training pack, so you have the opportunity to look at search results and make sure they're appearing as you'd like them to for your patrons. Once you've approved those limit buys, we can go ahead and add those to your production PowerPAC. Okay. So the next thing I'll touch on is something called Feature It Promotions. So the Feature It Promotions tool, what this is used to do is to link out to library programs, record sets, or databases when certain search terms are entered. It uses a "you may also like" format, so similar to sort of an Amazon search where you search for one thing and then it suggests other things based on the terms that you've entered. This tool is only accessible via the staff client, and in my opinion, the best usage case is to promote a library database program, to promote a library database or program that has a specific audience. I think the biggest caveat I must add with this tool is there's no end date to the promotion. So you have to remember to remove it from the catalog after the program date has passed. So for example, if you are promoting a story time or computer class, and that occurs next month and you enter it as a promotion, you have to make sure that you make a note to remove that promotion once the date of the program has passed, because it will keep appearing in those search results so long as it's running in the background. So let me show you an example of that. Okay, so at the Desplaines library, they've opted to link out to a specialized reading list. So for example, when the search term monarch is entered, a link to the Monarch Award nominees appear. So patrons will still see the regular search results appear, but up top you'll see this you might also like, and then a link out to a reading list. I see you have a question with this one. Let me open up the chat here. It's a Google Analytics question. Is there a way to know which Google Analytics, is there a way to know via Google Analytics which limit by options our patrons are using or not using? That is a good question. In user testing, we found that a lot of patrons didn't use that limit by to start. It was not commonly used all the time. We tested with 15 people. I want to say 4 of them used the limit by. So the ones that did use it used it in almost every search. But those who didn't use it were just using that keyword search. And you can kind of see from even just the screen cap we've got in front of us, you've got a search by and a limit by. So there are a lot of choices you're making on how you're going to search. And then you've also got the facets on the left-hand side. So I think there's a little bit of that like decision fatigue about making your way through searches. You've got so many different ways that you can search once you get started. So the limit by, I don't have information about what limit bys are used at your library. I can see if we're able to generate a report that might share information about that limit by. And then I can see who's asked this question, and I can see if we can run that for your library. So that is something I will follow up with you on individually. See another question. It says, I'd love to remove most of the options to simplify, but would want some justification for doing so. Yes, that absolutely makes sense. So yeah, I can provide you with that information. Okay, so kind of getting back to Feature It. So you can see here, they've used Feature It in order to point attention to a special collection. You can see the Fremont Library, and I like this use of it best. At Fremont, they've set it up so that when a user enters the search term ACT, a library program appears titled College Admissions Criteria and the Impact of COVID-19, sort of thinking that folks that are looking for those ACT prep books are probably the same people wondering about getting into college and how COVID might be affecting that. So if you have a program with a really pointed audience and you know what search terms they might be looking for, you can use those to draw attention to a program that your library might be running. I think really the best usage case for these, though, has to do with those library databases. I know month over month libraries are trying to promote those databases and make sure that usage is as high as it can be, but trying to tell patrons that you have those databases can be a hard thing to do. So that's where something like the Feature It tool comes in. So I think a great example is if you have a test prep database at your library, you could set it up so that words like ACT, SAT, NCLEX, PSAT, those types of tests for which you have test prep materials in a database, you could set it up so when a nursing student enters an NCLEX, they see you might also like, and then they're seeing that you've got a database that can help them study for that, or that lynda.com might contain something to help prep for NCLEX. But the idea is you're connecting users to the databases you have based on the search terms that are being entered. I think the hardest thing is deciding which search terms are going to launch which feature it's. So the best way to do this would probably be to take a look at all of the databases that you have and then think about which search terms users are using or would be using to find materials that connect with that database. So the types of books those users are looking for, what search terms might they use to find them, and then how can you roll those databases into the search results. Same thing with a program. I would say for a program that has a really pointed audience, or that you're maybe paying a lot of money for and you want to roll the largest number of users into, setting up a Feature It for a program like that would definitely help draw those users in. Okay, so when setting up a Feature It, the reason I rate it as difficult is that it does require access to the staff client, and you are entering each Feature It individually. The same way you would enter a program into Communico or Evanced, you are entering a Feature It for each thing. So that does take a lot of time and effort. So I think you're better off choosing a couple databases to promote or a couple larger programs and then entering Feature Its for those instead of entering a Feature It for every single program your library is going to run. I like a tool that promotes events that have a very specific audience, so you can identify the right search words. I know it can be difficult to choose what search words will be used. So again, if you can find something that's got a really specific audience, I think that's your best bet. But configured properly, this is a really powerful tool. So with this one, under Learn More, we've got a guide that will take you step by step through using Feature It. If it's something you decide you do want to implement, you will need access to a tool called the Staff Client and permission. But again, you can email us at help@ccslib.org in order to get that set up. And then once you've got it set up, you can go ahead and follow the guide. It'll take you step by step through creating those Feature It promotions using the designated search terms. Okay, so banners and hold pages. I know everybody in this group is probably pretty aware of our banner. Oh, quick question, let's see here. Are there analytics for how often Feature It campaigns are triggered? No, there are not analytics for how often it is triggered. However, what you can do is when you link out, you can use a bit.ly link in order to link out. And that's been my workaround for it is, let's say, for example, we were talking about that COVID-19 program that has to do with college admissions. If you were to submit that link as a bit.ly link, you could see how often it was clicked or used from the catalog. And that's been my workaround. But there are no native analytics that will tell you, how many people clicked on that database link that you included. But again, I would recommend using the bit.ly links or some kind of URL shortener that has analytics, because you'll want to know if the time and effort you put into creating those Feature Its is worth it, and if it's something you want to continue doing in the future. Okay, so banners and hold pages. So you're likely aware that you can add a custom banner to your library catalog, but I want to mention it as a matter of housekeeping. With all the openings and closings of libraries, allowing your PowerPAC banner to match the one on your website helps keep a consistent web presence. I want to note banners can be any color to match up with your library's branding, as well as contain links. The same thing can be said for your hold page. You can add what I'll call a mini banner to that place. And the reason I do recommend doing that is you can add things like a link to your online hold scheduler or add information about how holds may be picked up at your library. So let me show you two good examples of this. So here Huntley has opted to include a banner with closing information. They'll actually be closed for a pretty significant amount of time. So what they've done is they've added that banner up top with a real short and simple message. Always recommend keeping that as short as you can. And then they've linked out to their library's updates page. So patrons can go there to learn more about the closure and how it will affect library services. Then they've added what we call a mini banner on that holds page here. And with this, they've got that same closure listed, but they've also got next steps that patrons can take in order to make sure that they're picking up their holds correctly and they're getting the information that they need. A little more simply, Highland Park has matched their banner up top to the same color on their website. They've got their hours listed here and information about where patrons can go for updates. And then here they've linked out to where people can pick up those holds and included that information in this space. I've seen more and more libraries putting the hold scheduler here as well. So patrons can see if something is available for pickup right from this page. They can go ahead and schedule that online pickup. I know that a lot of our notices are including that information. Tools like Communico and Patron Point include those notices as well, but including that link on your holds page as well is just another place where your patrons can go to schedule that holds pickup online. So if you're paying a lot of money for that service already, you might as well promote it in all the ways that you can. Okay, so last but not least, I would recommend a content inventory. So if you've done any sort of website redesign, you're probably familiar with this idea of the content inventory. But essentially what that is, it's time that you schedule with CCS. And unless you're one of the libraries that we've added in the last 3 years, there's probably a chance you haven't really taken a deep look at your PAC in a couple of years since we first went live. This is why I would encourage you to perform a content inventory or declutter your homepage. In this process, we walk through your menus, we walk through your featured dashboards, and we crawl through your carousels. What that allows us to do is identify content that's outdated. It also gives you an opportunity to ask us, what's fueling this carousel, or where does this record set come from? Because I often think libraries have things on their PAC homepage, but they don't understand what's fueling it, or it might not be the best tool to reach their patrons. All of the things you see on your pack, from the header up at the top to the menu to the dashboards to that HTML area, all of that can be customized. And as service models are changing, especially given the times that we're in right now, it's a good idea to revisit and make sure you're comfortable with the things that are there and you're sharing the most useful information with your patrons, given the way your library services are currently set up. Okay. So if you were to want to schedule a content inventory, I'd say it's easy to medium. It's easy because it doesn't take a lot of time to email us and say, hey, I'd like to schedule that. The medium is the actual doing of the work. So that's implementing any suggestions that we make, or giving us feedback on how you'd like your pack to look, and then giving us time to draw that up in your training pack so you can approve it before we would roll out. And so if you're looking to do any sort of content inventory, you can email us at help@ccslib.org. We'll schedule out a half-hour review of your PowerPAC over Zoom, and we'll talk through what your goals are for the pack. We can talk through new collections that you've added, and maybe even talk about some of the struggles that you might be facing as far as getting information through the pack to your patrons. We can discover what the best tools are to reach your patrons, whether it's using a combination of something like Feature It, or just reconfiguring the dashboards that you have, or possibly putting them in different places. But we're always happy to talk through whatever problem you might be experiencing and recommend the tools that will help you to best reach your patrons. Okay, so I would like to open it up to any questions that you might have. I hope you enjoyed learning about how to customize your library catalog to promote library events and collections. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Okay. And I see the chat, there's a question there. I seem to remember in the before times, there was going to be a standardization of the pack menu across all CCS libraries. Is that still happening? So it's a good question, and I'll stop my share so I can show you my screen as I answer that. So CCS has a couple of groups, everything from a cataloging group to a patron, to a public services group. But one of the groups we have is the User Experience Advisory Group. And so what they do is conduct usability testing and make recommendations. So in the before times, when we were able to visit all of our lovely libraries and actually conduct that user testing in person, we wrote up a couple of different UX reports that I can link out to on our website. And we made recommendations for the library catalogs and some of the things we might want to unify. As we rolled out those recommendations, we found those recommendations would need to exist in 3 different tiers. So we have recommendations that are kind of an absolute, everyone should do this. We have recommendations that are a best practice, and then we have recommendations that exist as a further research and development. So one of the recommendations with menus we had made was to recommend that libraries have a catalog home button and a library home button within their catalog. And the reason for this is we found that patrons often got disoriented in search results. So, let's say they're searching for the Harry Potter book, they want to get back. They might hit that back button. But what we found is with the menu up top, they might look for a button that says catalog home or library home as a way to reset their search. So having a button for catalog home allows users to see your catalog homepage. So you're sort of getting all of the users seeing that homepage that might have something like the custom HTML and the dashboards there. But so long story short is it was a recommendation, but whether or not you take every recommendation we make is up to you. So I would love to see every header menu look the same for our libraries, but I understand that as much as we are like one collective consortium, we are all individual libraries, some of us with different things that we'd like to promote. So I think the addition of a library home and catalog home button was a great suggestion that came out of the UX advisory group. But among our library staff, there were different willingness levels to like adopt that. The other piece too is some libraries have, instead of saying library home, catalog home, they might say library website, or they might have their header up top link back to the library's homepage, and they prefer that to the catalog homepage. So it was kind of a matter of preference, but I think the simpler you can make that menu up top, the better off you are. We have, and maybe it's a good thing for me to just, maybe we could do an entire presentation on catalog analytics, honestly. But I think that for the most part, what we found is those menus people spend a lot of time crafting up top. they're not used at the level we might like to think. Because typically if someone's in your catalog, they don't want to book a study room. They don't necessarily want to see all of your library programming there. They're there because they want to find materials. It's the purpose of the catalog. So if you can keep that menu streamlined and link only to the things that your patrons need in that space, that's probably how you're going to serve them best. Okay, I see that there's 2 more questions here. All right. Great program. Is this being recorded? Can we access slides? Yes, I will email my presentation with all the speaker notes and links out to everybody who signed up. And it is being recorded and will be shared on YouTube. Okay, somebody asked, is there a way to add custom filters to the sidebar of the results page beyond format and ability? For instance, narrowing search results within a large collection like local authors. We cannot customize the facets that appear on the left-hand side. Let's see. Specifically, they say, for instance, narrowing search results with a large collection of local authors. So if you have a record set and want to enable your patrons to search within the record set, what I might recommend doing is having you could have a dashboard for local authors, and then you could break it out into the subjects, whether that's perhaps by genre or by author, and then you would have smaller record sets within a dashboard. So it'd be a really good question too to open up a help desk ticket where if you have a problem, not even a problem, but if you have like a really interesting like challenge of like, how do I break this up, or what's the best way for me to organize this information as a dashboard, we're happy to talk through that with you and sort of decide how could you break that up to make that information more accessible to your patrons. Okay, so I don't see any more questions rolling in, so I think we're ready to wrap up. Thank you all for taking the time to attend with me this morning. I really appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, I will be emailing out this PowerPoint as well as the recording uploaded to YouTube. If you have any questions, happy to follow up via email, whether that's help@ccslib.org or kweiss@ccslib.org. But I'll go ahead and share what we've done here so you can share that with any colleagues who might be interested. So thanks again for coming, and I hope to see you at a couple more of our presentations in the future.